Okay, hello everyone. Thank you for joining us. And thank you so much for your interest in the series. We're focused on talking to experts from around Japan who are working in some way to help improve the lives of the people and the planet while making a profit. So, focused on sustainability. Thank you so much for joining, Tova.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
So wonderful to talk to somebody else who is doing consulting for businesses and with a focus on sustainability. And I'm sure the kinds of work that you do is a lot more involved and high level in big companies because you're based in Tokyo. So really excited to talk to you and get your perspectives on everything that you do. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks. No, it's really great to have an opportunity to talk to you today, and also great to meet somebody else working in the sustainability consulting space. So,
Yeah, no, it's so nice to find you. And I think somebody else in the series recommended you. And once I
oh,
started reading about you, I was like, yes, somebody else is doing it.
we're not
Awesome.
alone. Fantastic.
Do you want to start just introducing yourself and your business?
Yep. Okay. So I'm Tove Kinooka, and thank you for getting the pronunciation right. Um, so I'm kind of British, kind of Danish, but I've been living in Japan since 1998, and married to a Japanese and Osaka native. And we live here with our two kids in Yokohama, so we're just outside Tokyo. And the whole time in Japan, I've been working in people development, particularly focusing on leadership development and mindset and behavior change. And 5 years ago, I set up a company, Global Perspectives, with my business partner, Gavin Dixon, who's from Australia, but is also a long-time Japan resident. And we focus on helping companies kind of make the transition to being a fully sustainable business, but working very much on the people side of that. So I know a lot of consultancies focus on the strategy side, on the kind of the nuts and bolts of what's measured and what is the structure that's required and all of that, which of course is incredibly important. But we work very much on the people side of that. So ensuring that the people within the organization are aligned with the strategy that the company has and where they want to go.
Yeah, that's so important. And of course, environmental concerns also impact people, but more focus on the people who work for companies as well as local people impacted by services or products. Really, really an important focus. And do the companies and people that you consult with, do they seem to get it from the beginning and seek you out? Or do you have to go to companies and say, listen, you guys need this?
Hmm.
Is it kind of a combination or?
It's very much a combination, I think. I mean, we always look at sustainability as a journey, yeah? So at one end of the journey, you've got the ones who either are completely clueless or in denial and sort of hear no evil, speak no evil. Let's not even think about that and just focus on business and profit. And at the other end of the scale, you've got organizations that are completely purpose driven and everything they do is about impact first and the profitability follows on behind that. So if you think of that kind of scale there, and the journey to get from one end to the other, the clients we work with are can be anywhere along that scale. So if you're starting at the near the denial end, then obviously it's a much tougher conversation. Like why do we even need to be thinking about this, and how does it connect to our business anyway? And if they're further along, it's more about, okay, we've been trying to do this, but how can we get our people on board, and how do we make it part of everyday behaviors? How do we make it part of the way we lead, and message things internally and externally? So it really depends on where they are on that journey.
Yeah, and I was listening to the BCCJ talk that you had recently, and we'll talk a little bit about that more. But there's certainly concerns now because of coronavirus time
Mm.
that the focus is on survival. financial
Right.
survival. And maybe the sustainability side kind of becomes second tier or not as important. But I think I heard you say, and I strongly believe that it is part of your branding. And
Yeah.
if it's part of your mission and you don't follow it, you're going to be hurt
Yeah.
in the long term, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting because I think when it first started to really bite this crisis, then a lot of organizations, understandably, ourselves included, were in survival mode. We were just sort of thinking, oh my God, how are we going to pay the bills next month? And can we keep our people and things like that? And can we continue to supply our products and services? So those were very, very real and major concerns. And I think it was natural for things to be maybe put on the back burner a little. But I think once we realized that this was not going to be a quick situation, nothing was going to be solved quickly. This is ongoing. It's still ongoing. We don't know when we're going to be out the other side of it. I think more and more organizations now are taking the opportunity to kind of sit back and say, okay, well, we're not going to be, normal is different now. And we don't know what that's going to look like. So how can we proactively make it better so that we come out of this looking better, doing better, and not only surviving but actually thriving as well. So I think it is an incredible opportunity, and the UN's got, the World Economic Forum has got this wonderful initiative called the Great Reset that's just sort of getting underway now. And I think that that really sums up the mindset we're seeing, and we're hearing a lot of kind of talk about build back better and things like this. So I think there's been a shift in the last few months, and I hope that's going to continue to build.
And on your website and everything, of course, there's a big focus on SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals. And that has been a big push in Japan. Do you find that most companies seem to understand the need to kind of aim or have a mission towards the goals? Or is there kind of a confusion about how to actually do it? Like a lot of people wearing
Yeah.
the pins, right?
Yes. Yes. Yeah, and it's funny because I mean I think I read some data earlier this year that was now the most worn pin in Japan or something, and it's true. I mean, when we were still able to go out and about to events and things, you'd see them all the time. But we've actually had the experience, or Gavin, my business partner, was speaking to some guy once who he saw wearing the pin and was like, "Oh, wonderful, SDGs," and the guy was like, "Yeah, I don't have a clue what this is. My boss said I have to wear it," and okay.
I've been to events like that, and
Yeah,
everybody's wearing the pin, and they have specific goals of
yes,
what they're doing. I was like, oh, that's fantastic. How are you doing that? And they're like, I don't know.
yep, not a clue. And I think
Oh no, yeah.
that's what we're seeing a lot. But I think it shows, I mean, there's a lot of pressure on organizations, I think, from the government. The government's really strongly pushing SDGs. There's pressure building as well from, external stakeholders, such as consumers saying, actually, no, we want to know where our products are coming from and how they're made. And are you stepping up? And also from inside the company itself, particularly with younger employees who are perhaps a little more active around SDGs and issues, particularly around environment and equality and things like this. So the companies are under pressure from so many directions. So I think they're feeling that and saying, okay, well, yeah, this is something we need to do, really take some action on. But they're struggling with the how. And so that's really where we're working, sort of finding that pain point. And you can go and look at a company's website and, you'll see SDG 5 and, 14 and or we're doing this. You're like, great, wonderful. But like you say, when you say to them, so what does that mean inside your organization? How does that translate into the policies you have and how you manage on a day-to-day basis? They can't answer that question. So the idea is there, the pressure is there, and I think companies are looking for how. and also to shift it from an obligation and kind of like, oh gosh, this is something we really have to do, but it's high-end, it's really hard, to actually this is an opportunity for us to do something differently and better. So what are we going to do around this? We're trying to help them see the opportunity rather than just the risks and the obligations.
Yeah. I've really noticed that, that when I visit certain hotels that obviously have it as part of their mission, and it
Mm-hmm.
comes from the top is very passionate about it. And then you ask any staff about how they're doing it, and they know,
Yeah.
because it's part of their corporate image, and all the
Mm-hmm.
staff know very well. I'm so impressed by that,
Yeah. Yeah.
and then you'll go somewhere else and you'll be like, oh wow, that's great, how are you doing that? Don't know, oh dear. Right, so on your website it says, you're teaching organizations how to put a sustainable strategy and vision through the organizational mindset and behavioral transformation. So a lot
Yeah.
of the things that you do would be seminars and workshops inside the company for the staff, maybe.
Yeah, very much so. So again, it sort of depends a little bit where they're at on that journey, and how we come into the organization, whether it's seen as we need to develop the people, or whether they don't even have that understanding yet, and it's just we need to do something around sustainability. So you guys do SDGs, what do you do? Um, so we usually start off with the consulting side, talking to the top of the organization, finding out what is that vision and is it actually clear what you want to achieve, what are you trying to move towards, because sometimes it isn't, and they need help getting the clarity on actually what is the shift we're trying to make. And then once that is clear, it's a case of, okay, so in this organization, where are you at now? And where are your people generally at now? What's the level of awareness with sustainability and SDGs? What's the level of engagement? Do people really care about it or not? Do they see the connection to their work or not? And then designing whatever interventions are necessary to get that mindset behavior shift towards where the organization wants to go. So that might be, it might be coaching for leaders, it might be workshops, maybe sort of larger awareness style ones. First of all, it might be more in-depth sort of nuts and bolts, working on SDG connected projects in the company, saying, okay, so how are we going to take this thing and really make it into reality and get people bought into it? And so it can vary a lot, but yeah, a lot of hands-on work with the people at different levels in the organization.
Yeah, so important. On your website, you talk about your vision, and being net positive on people and our planet. Can you explain that a little bit?
Okay, so I think if we go back to that obligation opportunity thing that I mentioned earlier, so if you're looking at sustainability just as an obligation, it tends to be about damage limitation. How can we do the least bad? So how can we cut our carbon footprint a bit? How can we cut our use of single-use plastics or whatever it is? So it tends to be looking at, what's the bare minimum we can do to meet ESG, compliance requirements and be okay. But if you can instead look at it as an opportunity and say, okay, well, how can we make a positive contribution to people and planet? Or planet, depending on your industry, then that's where we're talking about net positive. You're not just, limiting or neutralizing the impact you're having. You're actually making a positive contribution.
Yeah. I find compliance, of course, is first and foremost. People have to do that.
Yeah.
And then sometimes I'll find a business that's doing so much more, but they don't use it in their marketing, or they don't
Right.
use it as a part of their brand. They don't see the potential of it to really help their business grow. Do you find that as well?
Absolutely, absolutely, yeah. And I think it's interesting. We had a conversation recently about whether that's particularly the case in a lot of Japanese companies, I think, because there has been, part of the culture of Japanese companies is really to take care of, generations, and it's very long-term thinking in a lot of sense. So there are often things going on or things that the company's doing that really do make a positive contribution, but because it's just something that they've always done, they perhaps don't see the connection yet or initially to SDGs and what they're being asked to do. So if you can help them make that connection, it's like, oh, great, we're already doing this. That's fantastic. Then you can look for more opportunities to do that as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's very much the case.
I find it really exciting, especially small and medium-sized businesses, when you see how much above and beyond they're doing, and you contact them saying, listen, I can help you, like, communicate this because I understand sustainability. You obviously love what you're doing in such a wonderful way. Let's work together and really spread the message, not just in English, but I think a lot of your Japanese customers would appreciate this. And sometimes you get them saying, yeah, but we don't really want to brag about it. Like, that's just something we do. They're so modest.
Right. Yes, exactly. So then I suppose it's all about the messaging, isn't it? It's how can you tell people about what you're doing and the positive impact that's having without making it sound like you're, making a big PR stunt out of it. Because I think that's something that consumers are getting more and more skeptical of as well. There's this whole sort of talk of greenwashing and companies coming out and saying, oh wow, look at what we're doing, it's amazing, and then you look beneath the surface and you go, yeah, actually, and it's really not that great, or it's just sort of distracting from the things you're doing that are not so good. So yeah, I think that is something we need to be very sort of cognizant of.
Yeah, so that is another reason for businesses that are actually doing it to actually put that information out there, because big companies that are doing it a tiny bit are marketing themselves as very green, so you have to compete with that. Yeah, exactly. Get your information out there. Let's talk about your strategic partners on your website. Can you introduce them?
Okay, I'm just bringing up that, so prompting my memory. So, I mean, we're a very, very small organization. So at the core, there are four of us. So Gavin, myself, Stefan Perron, and Tomomi Komura. And so in order to have the impact we want to have, we need to work with partners. So we've been developing over the last 5 years a lot of partnerships with organizations and with individuals. So one of those partners that we've started working with this year is Jody Ono, who was until April a professor at Hitotsubashi ICS on the Executive MBA program there, and she's a specialist in leadership. And we started off talking about writing a book or something, and then we thought, well, nobody reads books nowadays, do they? I don't know. I seem to get halfway through and then get distracted by kids and things. So we thought, okay, well, with all this COVID thing kicking off just as we started to talk about collaborating, we were really curious as to how leaders were kind of coping with this. How were they approaching leadership? What were they changing about their leadership style? What were they learning about themselves as leaders? What were they doing differently? So we started talking about creating a leadership interview series. So Jody has been our key partner in developing that, on finding people to interview. We've released 2 so far, and the third one will go out hopefully end of this week. And it's brilliant because she brings, she's worked in leadership in academia for many years and has a very, very deep understanding of different leadership approaches, and so brings a very sort of different angle to us. So we've been sort of very much at the coalface, if you like, sort of talking to the leaders and developing them in the organization. She's got very much the conceptual and a very, very deep knowledge base underneath that. So we found it's a really great combination, and we're learning a lot from her and very much enjoying that collaboration.
Yeah, I saw the excellent interview you guys did with Mariko McTeer from Maimizu. Maimizu pretty much comes up almost in every talk on the Seeking Sustainability Live. Yeah, they're doing some great stuff, and they've got so much amazing young energy. And I think in that talk, you were talking about lateral leadership styles, and that was really interesting. How, especially for young startups,
Yeah.
it's not a top-down business approach. It's very community,
Right.
social based, building up, and
Hmm.
it's really exciting, isn't it? What they've done.
Yeah, amazing. And also, I think what was really interesting for us in that interview with Mariko is that they're very much a purpose-driven organization. That's why they exist. And how seeing how that purpose had really come into play during the crisis to keep people engaged and motivated. And she's leading, or they're leading their not only their team of people, but actually a broader movement in society. And despite all the challenges of COVID, they're really still building huge momentum there. So it was amazing to see how powerful having that really clear and transparent purpose was. And I think there's a lot that larger organizations and their leaders can learn from that as well.
Yeah, for sure. And the
Mm.
social media savvy is definitely something that they're doing well, which I think a lot of businesses in Japan need to be focused on a little bit better. Especially,
Right.
and this was interesting when I talked to Dominic Carter.
Mm.
He's a traditional marketing guru, right? And it's so interesting to talk to him and realize how sustainable brands need to invest in professional marketers. They
Yeah.
need to get their message out there the same as any traditional company. In fact,
Mm.
more,
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. Well, it goes back to what you said, isn't it? They might be doing great stuff, but if nobody knows about it,
Nobody
that's
knows.
not going to help
Yeah.
their brand at all. And it's not easy to know how to message this stuff. So
Yeah,
yeah,
you need to
absolutely.
do it in the right way. So it's
Mm.
transparent, so the viewer believes what you're saying. It's
Hmm.
very important that you have data and facts and proof of what you're saying because of greenwashing, and everybody's very skeptical
Yeah,
in
yeah.
this day and age, right?
Exactly, exactly. So you've got to get it right.
Yeah, for sure. I
Mhm.
really enjoyed your BCCJ talk that you guys had about COVID redefining responsible business. Can you introduce that a little bit?
Yeah, so that happened very early on in the whole sort of, well, certainly early on in terms of Japan in the COVID crisis. So in the BCCJ, we have three core pillars that we work on. So one is diversity and inclusion, the second is technology and innovation, and the third is responsible business. And they all sort of interlink, but they very much drive everything we do at the BCCJ when we're looking at planning events and so on. And so we were really, again, curious when this all started to happen and things began to really shut down. Um, what did that mean for responsible business? And so I had a conversation with David Bickle, who's the president of the BCCJ and is a tax partner at Deloitte Tohmatsu, and Heather McLeish, who is a director at EY, but also has a very strong background in sustainability. And Heather and I are both part of the Responsible Business Task Force at the BCCJ. Um, so we were looking at, yeah, does this mean that things are on hold? Does it mean that priorities are changing for organizations? And from what we could see and the responses we were getting during that conversation and before and afterwards as well, it seems that if anything, it's accelerating things. It really is making organizations realize that you can't just carry on business as usual, and you've got to step up and be more responsible, whether that's towards people or planet or both. So that was really encouraging actually to see.
Yeah, wonderful. And you were also talking about things that you've noticed in terms of COVID, having to work from home and the benefits of that, which
Yeah,
maybe has a place in future of business.
absolutely. So again, I mean, it comes back to that opportunity, doesn't it? First of all, it was an obligation. We all had to go and work from home. And particularly if you've got kids like I do, I mean, it's a struggle. And I occasionally have my 4-year-old popping up in meetings and things, and that's been the case for many people, I think, and trying to balance sort of keeping on top of being a parent and managing also just the very different dynamic of everybody being at home and trying to get work done, um, has been very, very challenging for a lot of people. But it's also an incredible opportunity, freeing us up from, the 90-minute commute into Tokyo, for example, on the crowded train. And suddenly, if people are realizing that actually we don't need to be in the office and we can do a lot of our work and be really productive from home, and it gives us time to, be with our families and maybe have some hobbies. Who knew that that was an option? I think for so long there's been this, particularly in Japan, I have to say, this kind of unwritten understanding that to be working, you have to be at your desk in an office. And this has completely blasted that myth out of the water. And so organizations are having the opportunity to say, okay, well, we don't need to do this. And how does that change the way we want to work and be as an organization? And I think that's a fantastic opportunity. And you've got companies like Fujitsu who've, officially said now 50% of their workforce can work from home, I think it is, so they're downsizing the physical space that they need, which is, of course, cost benefit for the organization, but health benefits for the employees as well. So I'm really curious to see how this plays out in the long run and how many companies will stick with a blended option or allowing people to work from different locations.
Yeah, I'd love to see more, like companies give a subsidy for people who travel by public transport or even who drive. Why
Yeah,
not give a subsidy to people who cycle, and
yeah.
then you have, or walk, and then you've
Mhm.
got the health benefit of a healthier employee, which is more productive, but you're also supporting more sustainable lifestyle options. And
Absolutely. Yeah.
you also talked about in the talk, and having your kids in the back is so funny, that didn't have any negative effect for the BBC reporter who
Right.
who had his kids coming,
Yeah.
right?
I think it became quite a talking point, didn't it?
In
So,
fact, it went viral and everybody
yeah,
was watching it because of it, right? So,
exactly.
and showing that human side, that you are a working mother,
Yeah,
that's the new reality, right?
exactly. I think it can help, build more empathy for the people we're working with. If you realize that, they're not just a machine focused solely on, you know, doing whatever task is in front of them for work, they also have a life outside that and responsibilities and interests outside that. And I think if we can see more of that about each other, know each other better, and understand the pressures, the concerns, then hopefully that enables us to connect better with them, build stronger trust, and so on, which is so important for a productive working environment.
Yeah, definitely. We have a good question here from Chris Kozak,
Mhm.
sorry. How can we raise awareness of the climate crisis in Japan? Huge,
Hmm.
huge question.
It's
Um,
a question.
I
Yeah.
think in your experience, how do you incorporate that as part of SDG goals, or how it's going to benefit the company in terms of branding?
Hmm.
Is that a way to fit it in?
I think there are lots of different ways we can do this. So one, and with our company, we have kind of two streams, if you like, that get us towards the impact we want to have. So one of those is working directly with the clients, as we've said. So in that sense, it might be looking at how does how does the climate crisis impact their company, getting them to really understand what are the risks we're facing. It's not some faraway thing that we might just complain about the weather, but actually, how does it impact our business? What are the immediate, short-term, long-term risks of this for us as an organization, and what do we need to do about that? So when we're working in the consulting or development side of things, then that's the approach we would take to build that understanding. The other stream we have is looking at building the community and awareness generally. So that would be through things like events. And I know Chris and I both attended, I met him last year at the Climate Reality Leadership training with Al Gore that was held for the first time in Japan last October. Um, And when I signed up for that, I thought maybe there'll be, I don't know, 50 to 100 people or something. And there were over 800. It was incredible, mostly Japanese and from every kind of organization you can think of. And that was the first time they'd held that training in Japan. And it was very successful, very well received. And then all of us who've been through that training are now sort of climate reality leadership ambassadors, if you like. So we can go out and use what we've learned there, use the materials to hold events, whether those are with communities, with schools, with businesses, to really spread that message. And I think what was really, really effective about the climate reality training that we did, it was a 2-day, very, very intensive experience, was that it came just after there'd been a large typhoon in Japan that had caused a huge amount of damage. And Al Gore had updated his slides that he was presenting to actually include images of that, of Japan and the week before and the damage that it caused. And he had facts and figures from the Ministry of Agriculture saying this is the impact it's having and this is the knock-on effect on individuals and organizations. And if you can show that link and get people to understand, okay, this is not just something I'm watching on TV in some distant kind of thing and oh, that's too bad for them, isn't it terrible? This is impacting me and this is impacting potentially my kids' future. So what am I going to do about it? And get people to realize that this is something we're all in, like it or not, and we all have a role to play. Then you can begin to get that engagement and inaction. Yeah. And it takes a long time. It's not going to happen overnight, but the more we can get out there and help people make those connections, I think the better we'll build the momentum for change.
Yeah, and I think it's similar to what we talked about before we started today about choosing your battles. As a parent, as a teacher, as a consultant, you cannot just go on everything. You have to kind of observe, you have to listen, you have to choose when and where strategically to put in certain environment things or society building things. You can't overwhelm them, right? Like it's a very delicate balance.
Yeah. And it's interesting you use the word overwhelm because I think that's a big part of the problem. If we're talking about the climate crisis, it's so massive and it's so utterly terrifying, everything we're hearing. And we're being bombarded with images and numbers and things all the time. And I think people just go into to shutdown. It's too much to take on, and if we just keep going like that, people just shut down after a while. They disengage from the issue, and just sort of put their heads in the sand and hope that it's all just going to be okay and somebody will
just give up and be like, well, I can't do anything because it's obviously too big of a problem. So why should we even try? Why should we even spend money on this? So it could really go the other extreme. I'm showing balance, for sure. I'm showing your ecosystem services graphic right now. Do you want to introduce that?
Right. So the ecosystem is, again, going back to that understanding and awareness of how does this impact me? What are the connections? So we always start with getting organizations or individuals to think about where are they in the ecosystem? Okay, and who are they connected to, maybe in the immediate supply chain or communities, and what are the sort of ripple out effects and connections from there, and how are all these connections interdependent on each other? So an ecosystem is, obviously something where everything is interconnected and interdependent, and I think that's a really important understanding that what I do, the decisions I make today are going to affect somebody else tomorrow or in a year or 10 years or whatever. And other people's decisions are affecting me. So if we can begin to get an understanding for those connections and kind of zoom out, if you like, and see the big picture, then you can understand, okay, so in order to have the more positive effect or mitigate any negative effects we're having, where do we need to start looking, and who do we need to be collaborating with or working with here? So then you can zoom back into specific areas and start to say, okay, so these are the actions we need to take here, and then out again and move into a different space.
Yeah, so important, and so wide-reaching. It's just in everything, right? So
Yeah.
if you just listen to what their needs are, and then you're like, oh well, maybe that would fit well with your mission, or that would fit well with your branding, and then
Exactly. Yeah. And also with different players. So, I mean, back to the strategic partners, the also a lot of what we see is, you hear a need perhaps, or a desire to do something, but maybe they don't have the necessary expertise or infrastructure, whatever. And you think, okay, but we've been talking to these guys and they can help you with that. So it's about maybe understanding my own ecosystem and how that can help others as well, and how we can connect and bring people together. So a lot of the events and things we run are also looking at that, not just building awareness and understanding it and sharing learning with each other, but looking for opportunities to collaborate, because none of us are big enough to solve any of these issues by ourselves. And I think we've got a quote on the website from Paul Polman, the former Unilever CEO, who really summed that up and said, goal 17 of all the SDGs, number 17, the partnership for the goals, is really the most important, because none of us can solve this alone. Even massive multinational corporations or governments cannot solve these issues alone. Everything's interconnected, which means we need to collaborate in order to solve the problems.
yeah, you had goal 17, future of work in a socially distanced world, on your Facebook page. That looked like a really interesting panel discussion.
Right. So, yeah, the Goal 17 Partners is actually an organization based in the US that we're working with. And they they were set up 4 years ago, and they're really about getting companies into action and looking for collaboration and action opportunities to make the SDGs become reality by 2030. So their end goal almost is that by 2030, their organization will no longer be required, because the goals will be taken care of. So the idea is that they convene these events, and that might take the form of panel discussions. It might be sort of closed door, more exclusive events where companies are coming together to say, look, we want to do this, but we can't. Who can help us here? How are we going to work together to solve this problem? And they have a presence at Davos and Global Goals Week and all these things. And so we're working with them on the Japan side to bring Japan and Asia into that conversation up front and center as well, to look at what can Japan contribute, what can Japan learn from this. And they have very strong connections with the UN and the World Economic Forum. So we've been able to bring together some really great speakers who bring very, very different perspectives to the issue. And we hope that is then, helpful in terms of insights and learning for other organizations, and potential collaboration opportunities as well.
Yeah, sounds really interesting. If anyone's interested, you can find them at goal17partners.org. And you also have links on your Facebook page for global perspectives, right?
That's right, yeah. Yes.
Let's talk about the young world, one young world. Sorry.
It's very hard to get it right.
You are the director of the Japan side of things?
I'm one of the team of directors.
Okay.
On the
Can
Japan
you introduce it to us?
Okay, so One Young World is something that we came across a couple of years ago. It's actually a UK-based NPO that started maybe 11 years ago now in the UK, around, again, wanting to take action on the SDGs, but give young leaders the platform they needed to step up, or many of them are already stepping up, but also to show what they're doing to bring people together for collaboration and learning and action on SDGs. And they hold a summit every year in a different city. So it started off in London. It's been in Bangkok, Bogota, Cape Town. It's been all over the world. Last year it was again in London for the 10th anniversary, which was really an amazing experience. 4 days, people coming together from all over the world. You've got business leaders. You've got Paul Polman is there always and has been since the beginning. Richard Branson was there. You've also got activist J.K. Rowling was there talking about her sort of nonprofit work. You've got young leaders from every corner of the earth who are really doing incredible work and talking about the projects they're doing, collaborations that are happening between NPOs, corporates, governments, the impact that that's having. So it's an incredibly inspiring and powerful platform for young leaders. And the Japan committee has also been set up by from the beginning. It's headed by Kimihito Okubo, who's been involved with the founders of One Young World from the very beginning. And a group of us started working with Kimi a couple of years ago to really make more happen in Japan on this, to get Japan's young leaders on that stage, stepping up, involved in these issues and conversations. And so we are actually very excited that the summit is coming to Japan. It was supposed to be next year, but with COVID, the Munich summit this year has been pushed to next April, and the Tokyo summit will now be in 2022. But we're thrilled that that an organization of that size and impact is coming to Japan, and we're very, very excited to showcase what young leaders in Japan are doing, because there's so many great things going on. Again, like with the companies we said, they're often they don't have the platform or the maybe awareness to get out there and shout about it. And so that's going to be a fantastic opportunity there. And we also run what's called the Global Leader Accelerator around that. So we're working with corporations who are very committed to SDGs and to developing their young leaders. And so we've developed a sort of 8-month program that incorporates the One Young World Summit, where the young leaders come together as a team. They're working on a live SDG project that actually is a real business prospect for the organization. So several projects from the first year have already been implemented and are now generating actual revenue for the company and having a positive impact. So that back to that net positive conversation. So I love it. I mean, it's such an inspiring organization to work with, and seeing how it transforms the mindsets and behaviors of the young leaders, the next generation leaders that we're working with throughout that process is really wonderful to work with.
And I see that Robin Lewis is on the recent news page, and also the oil spill in Mauritius. Now this is really tricky, right? Because you have sponsors who are from the industry, and this is often something that any consultant or anyone working in sustainability has to struggle with, because you don't want to compromise, right? You don't want to compromise the integrity of yourself or of the brand image that you want people to believe, but you need funding for events. How do you, can you talk about that a little bit? It's a tricky one.
It is a tricky one, but I think, I mean, you said the key word there, and that's integrity, isn't it? And I think if organizations are serious about the commitments they have to sustainability and SDGs and a future for all of us, then they need to step up in situations like this and not shy away from it and say, okay, fair enough, this was our responsibility, but here's what we're going to do about it. So rather than sort of looking at it as damage limitation, and it's okay, so this happened, we regret very deeply that happened, but now we want to work with, whoever it takes to really sort this out. So please, tell us what we need to do. So I think if organizations, like leaders in a way, can show that vulnerability and say, look, we don't get everything right, and we did make a mess, but now we need your help to get through this. So we're listening. If you can take that approach to it, and then as consultants, yes, that's a delicate balance in between, but if you can enable those conversations and get the client to a place where they're willing to listen and cooperate rather than going into defensive mode, then I think that's how we can move through situations like this.
Yeah. And I think what you just said, don't move into defensive mode, is so important. Like take the situation in, try to evaluate, try to think of how you can move in a positive way, how you can make positive change, how you can improve upon this situation. And
Yeah.
I mean, the reality is these major companies have huge impacts if they change a little bit, right?
Yes.
Like, wasn't it with a major fast food chain that we will not mention, but once they started selling apple slices to kids as an option for French fries, they became the world's biggest buyer of apples, right? And when a famous coffee company changes to fair trade, huge impact on fair trade demand around the world, right? So
exactly. So the responsibility on organizations like that, I think, is massive, and the pressure as well. But yeah, I mean, if you can, like you say, just small changes there and the effect they can have, and I think that can snowball then. I mean, both within those organizations, and like if they can see the positive effect that is having, and how people are, responding positively to that, then hopefully they're going to look at, okay, so what else could we do that would also have a positive effect, and that can snowball. But it can also help other organizations, perhaps their competitors, go, well, we need to up our game. If these guys are doing it, look how everyone's responding to that. What do we need to do? So it creates what the Ellen MacArthur Foundation that's working on circular economy, it creates that kind of race to the top, if you like, rather than everyone saying, well, what's the bare minimum we can do to keep us, sort of level with our competitors? It's who can be the best. And you're creating suddenly that race to do things better and better and have an overall positive impact.
Yeah, definitely. It's hard, but the key thing is don't be overwhelmed and give up. And definitely there's small things that you can do which would have a really big effect. So let's think about it, and it might help your bottom line. It might help your brand in a really big way, which will help your bottom line in the future, right?
Yep, absolutely. So again, back to interconnected, it's none of these things happen in isolation.
Yeah. From your Facebook page, you just mentioned talking about the circular economy in terms of food resilience. That was really interesting.
Right, yes. And I think something that we all need to think about a lot more in terms of, how are we sourcing our food? And we're so reliant, particularly in large urban areas, on the supply chains. And I think something like COVID, plus all the environmental disasters like the huge, excuse me, typhoons that we had last year, that can suddenly disrupt supply chains, make us understand how fragile that is. And so it's really positive to see a lot of conversations happening now about people taking more responsibility, more transparency in food chains, but also more innovations like vertical farming is something that's been experimented with quite a bit recently and is beginning to gain traction. Urban farming, I think you interviewed John Walsh a little while back, who's doing great stuff working with schools and companies, getting them to realize that that space you've got outdoors that there's kind of nothing really going on in, you can do something with that, and that benefits well-being. If people are getting involved with growing plants and food, it's something that people can connect with and enjoy, but it's also giving you a resource that particularly when supply chains are disrupted, is actually very valuable. So it's great to see a lot of innovation happening in that space right now.
Yeah. And then in your one youth world, no, I'm going to get young.
One young world.
One young world. I got it. Okay. You have a scholarship offered by Asahi in terms of growing sustainable agriculture, and so there is some really good sustainable sponsorship in terms of this event. It's very exciting.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Because I mean, there's so much energy and enthusiasm and ideas among the generations coming out of universities and things now that and they're so aware. You've got the whole sort of Greta Thunberg effect, if you like. They're so much more aware than I was at that age of everything around them and how things are impacting and connected. We're blown away by the ideas and the quality of thinking that we see very often. So if we can connect people with those incredible ideas with organizations like Asahi who are stepping up and saying, yep, we're going to put money behind this and give you the backing you need to make this idea a reality, then that benefits all of us.
Yeah, and you had an interesting panel, all women, Shine a Light ambassador. So there's also the idea of promoting diversity, promoting women empowerment issues. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, certainly. So again, I mean, that's one of the key SDGs, and it's particularly important one, I think, for Japan, and something that's been talked a lot about in the media. And it's something that a lot of the young generation, sorry, I should stop saying that, next generation leaders with One Young World are very passionate about, and not just the women either. I think there's a much better understanding now with young men that things need to be equal. Isn't that just common sense? And so we're seeing a lot of really great ideas come out around, okay, so what do we need to do to move the dial on this? And you had a wonderful conversation recently with Jackie Steele, who's doing some fantastic work on that. And I think one of her former students at Todai was at One Young World with us last year, and is an incredible force of nature, Yuki Nagao. And she was sort of, I know, is working on projects. And I spoke to another young lady recently who's applying for this year's One Young World, and I hope we'll get in, who is very, very passionate on this issue and has really concrete ideas for getting things done. So it's not just more talk about it and, oh, wouldn't it be nice if we had equality and, whinging about all the negativity that's out there, but actually concrete ideas for moving things forward. So I really hope that we're going to see some of those projects coming to fruition.
And it's great to see, like on the panel as well, you see a lot of, women from all these different areas in Asia working together and sharing their perspective. And I think that is so powerful, and such a wonderful part of this program is to put Japanese people in the world perspective, and not just looking at the Japanese example or what happens here, but how are they doing it in other countries? Oh, how could we apply that here? And because we are so integrated in the global economy, right?
Yeah. And it's interesting. I mean, I think, yes, what can we apply from outside Japan to here? But also it works the other way as well, because, I mean, there are so much that we can learn as non-Japanese from the Japanese way of doing things as well. So I think it's very important that we keep that as a two-way conversation, and we don't want to sound as though it's like, okay, well, this is what they're doing in Europe, so this is how you guys should be doing it. That's not at all the case. And Japan does very well on other areas, so there's a lot we can learn from that. And so I think making sure that at the table is equals and not there just to learn.
Absolutely. I had such an interesting conversation the other day with Matt Alt about his new book about how Japanese pop culture has influenced the world and then back to Japan. You know, so it's so integrated in terms of culture and business and so many things.
Yes, yeah.
It's a small world, really. Yeah, for sure. We've got 5 more minutes. Is there anything we haven't touched on that you'd like to talk about? Oh, Spartan. I can't believe you're a Spartan athlete. This is amazing. Tell us about Spartan.
Well, it's fun. I absolutely love it. It started off as a bit of a joke for Gavin and I think 3 years ago when it first came to Japan, and we were having our strategy meeting at the beginning of the year, and we always set ourselves goals, like, okay, professionally, how are we going to develop ourselves over the next year? As a company, what are we going to achieve? And personally, we decided we needed to do a bit more exercise and find an outlet for any stress or frustrations. And we were having a coffee break, and Gavin happened to see an advertisement for the first Spartan race in Japan on Facebook. Went, oh, well, this looks fun, and yeah, okay, sign us up, great. And we didn't really know what we were letting ourselves in for. But it's just been the most incredible experience, and we're now complete Spartan, conversions. Totally, we have a team, so we then our one of our leadership team, Steph Parent, got involved, and then Tomomi came on later as well. We've got representatives from our clients, from our collaborators, friends that have joined the craziness of the team as well. We do it very much at the non-competitive level. So there are two levels you can do Spartan. Yes, we've got friends who do the elite, serious level, and I think you've interviewed Angela.
Angela, yeah, Angela Ortiz has been on the podium, right?
She's hardcore Spartan. She's, yeah, hats off to her. So that's definitely out of our league. But we do it as a team. We get round the course as a team. We never leave anybody behind. And the idea is that we challenge ourselves. We have fun. We count down to the beer at the end because that's a good motivator for all of us. But it's such an incredible experience to go through those races together. And last year we did the Beast for the first time, which was held at Gala Yuzawa, which is a ski hill. And the first 2K was just entirely vertical. And at that one point, I thought, I'm not going to get through this. It was 30 degrees. I was struggling with the heat. I hadn't prepared properly, and I just thought, I can't do this. And my team, just a couple of them were ahead, came back down, took my arms, went, get up, come on, we're moving up the hill. And again, later somebody else in the team sort of hit a point where she didn't think she could go on, but the team was there, and we just waited until she was ready to move. And I love the sense of camaraderie, of support, of teamwork within that experience. And at the beginning, we're all thinking, we're crazy, what are we doing with this? And then you look at these massive walls and think, I can't get across that. Or you hit the point at sort of 15K on the Beast or something, you just think, I can't get through this. But this sense of achievement at the end of that as a team is incredible. And I think it's something that we all value so much and just get a lot of enjoyment out of.
And in terms of being a consultant and being someone who's trying to do global partnerships, mm-hmm. and understanding physically as well the power of groupism and the power of teamwork and collaboration, I think it's a great hobby, kind of pastime to have, to remind you how when you're struggling, somebody else can pull you up. And
yeah, and it's not always the person you think it's going to be as well. It's interesting. I mean, the team is very diverse in terms of quite diverse age range, in levels of fitness and ability, physical ability. And so we all bring something very different to the team. And I think it's always surprising and really heartening to see what different people can bring to the team. So maybe the ones you think who, they're going to struggle a bit, they're going to find it tough, might really come through and be strong mentally at a point where others are struggling. And so I think it is a great metaphor for what you see in organizations and teams there as well. So recognizing the value of everybody on a team, and not necessarily what you might think would be at first, the hidden values that people bring as well and what they can contribute.
Yeah, it's so true. I was watching the Echo Challenge on TV yesterday, and I used to do triathlon, which is very, very individual sport. You do not need or want other people. Like it's all about you, right? But we don't have Spartan yet in this area of Japan. But I'd love to try.
Highly recommend it.
Yeah.
Highly recommend it. And more fun with a team.
That's awesome. Just to refer people back to your website, have a look at globalperspectives.biz, B-I-Z, and on Facebook, Global.
And LinkedIn. Oh, yes. We're Global Perspectives on Facebook and LinkedIn
Right.
as well.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much for all your insights and everything. And I think it's a very challenging way forward now during COVID. But still very valuable for businesses to be thinking about how they can assess and audit themselves and train staff and improve upon the good things they're doing and try to improve upon the things they're not doing so good. And that's somewhere that you can really help with your expertise. So thank you so much for everything you're doing.
Thank you for the opportunity. I really enjoyed the chat with you today. So thank you for that.
Wonderful. And we had some great comments, which I've put along the way. A lot of support for you from Kirsten O'Connor, Molly B., Chris Kozak as well. Great questions. And Yoshitsugu Fujiwara as well. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining. And tomorrow we are talking to Melanie St. James at 5 p.m. So please join us again.
That'll be a good one.
One more comment. Chris Kozak says thanks. So last comment. Thank you, Chris. And thank you so much. And have a good day, everybody. Take care and try to look at your own lives, look at your own business, see how you can improve. And little steps go a long way, right?
Yeah, very much. All starts with that first step.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Joy.
Bye.